Now, Mr. President, with that matter out of the way, I want to take this time to pay tribute to a very dear and noble colleague of mine, Everett Eissenstat. For the past 6 years, Everett has served as my chief international trade counsel on the Senate Finance Committee, a very important position. He has had a long and distinguished career in public service, obtaining and utilizing what is really an unparalleled level of knowledge and expertise about our nation's trade policy. In fact, I think it's safe to say that very few, if any, individuals have had as great an impact on the current state of U.S. trade law as Everett Eissenstat. His public service will continue as he has recently gone on to serve as Deputy Director of the National Economic Council. Everett received his Juris Doctorate at the University of Oklahoma, where he graduated cum laude and served as research editor of the Oklahoma Law Review. He also holds a master's degree in Latin American Studies from the University of Texas at Austin, and a bachelor's degree in political science and Spanish from Oklahoma State University. With diverse alma maters like that, some might wonder how Everett decides what colors to wear on college football Saturdays. But those of you who know Everett will correctly guess that he has, since his undergraduate days, remained a devoted fan of his beloved Cowboys. After obtaining his law degree, Everett went to work for Dixon in Dallas, Texas. Later, he worked as Congressman Jim Colby's legislative director, and shortly thereafter, Everett became the chief international trade counsel for the Senate Finance Committee for Senator Grassley, who was then the lead Republican on the committee. Everett was a key staffer in the effort to draft and pass the Trade Act of 2002, which renewed Trade Promotion Authority for the first time in 8 years. This was a major update to our nation's trade laws and made possible the completion and passage of trade agreements with Chile, Singapore, Australia, Morocco, Bahrain, Oman, Peru, Colombia, South Korea, Panama, as well as the countries of the CAFTA-DR agreement, namely Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and the Dominican Republic. Everett then helped to implement a number of these agreements when he served as Assistant U.S. Trade Representative for the Western Hemisphere, a position he held from 2006 through 2010. After recognizing his fine work, I asked Everett to return to the Finance Committee in January of 2011 to once again serve as Chief International Trade Counsel. And he continued to distinguish himself as one of the most knowledgeable and dedicated trade lawyers in the country. Very early in his second tenure at the Finance Committee, he helped shepherd our free trade agreements with Colombia, Panama, and South Korea through the Senate. And in 2015, he was the key staffer in the effort to draft, introduce, and pass the Bipartisan Congressional Trade Priorities and Accountability Act, which, among other things, once again renewed Trade Promotion Authority after another 8-year gap and updated our nation's trade negotiating objectives for the 21st century. At about the same time, Congress also passed legislation to update our customs enforcement and facilitation laws, as well as a bill to reauthorize important trade preferences. All of these successes were the culmination of years of hard work and represent the most ambitious legislative agenda in trade in recent history. And Everett was an indispensable part of it all. With his work on passage of those laws in 2015, his work on the prior TPA statute in 2002, and his efforts at USTR, Everett has been a key player in the development and facilitation of a generation of U.S. trade law. That's no small feat. Mr. President, more than anyone I've known, Everett is committed both to improving opportunities for Americans abroad and to ensuring an increasingly free trade economy around the world. He is a true believer in free trade and the benefits free trade brings to our economy. I'm not the only senator who will miss Everett's knowledge and expertise. Indeed, during his time here, he was an asset to the entire Senate. But more than that, I will miss him personally. His tireless work ethic, his calm and thoughtful demeanor, and his cheerful disposition, even when he's breaking bad news or telling senators things they may not want to hear. While I am sad to see him go, it is comforting to know that Everett is continuing to serve our country and will keep advancing pro-growth economic policies at the National Economic Council. His expertise and wisdom are more important now than ever before, with numerous trade possibilities on the immediate horizon. As I've said before, and I imagine I will say many times again, Everett is very, very good at what he does. The administration and the country are lucky to have such an important asset. I look forward to seeing his successes in this new chapter of his career. Though it goes without saying that he leaves behind some very big shoes to fill. I count myself lucky to have been the beneficiary of Everett's knowledge and advice for several years. Now I want to wish Everett, his wonderful wife Janet, and their sons Jacob and Alex the very best in this and any future endeavors. Everett has a dedicated family, and I understand that they're here today. I met with Everett's wife and his one son outside here just a short time ago. I'm quite certain they're just as proud of Everett as I am. Now, I've worked with a lot of people in the United States Senate. I've had a lot of staff people. All of them have been, almost to a person, very, very good. I've appreciated all of them. And I know that we wouldn't be nearly as good without our staff whispering in our ears, preparing the documents that we put into the record, working with us to help us to improve our abilities to put forth our agendas. But I want you to know that Everett Eissenstat has been one of the all-time great staff people on Capitol Hill. And I hesitate to even call him a staff person because he has the kind of reputation that goes far beyond being a staffer on Capitol Hill. He's one of the great leaders in this country. And I just want him to know how much I personally appreciate him. I want his wife to know how much I appreciate her and him. And his children, I want them to know what a great father they have. He's a great, great man, and I'm really happy to have said a few nice words about him on the floor. No matter what I say, it's not enough to really explain what a really great individual Everett Eissenstat really is. So, Mr. President, I just hope we can get other good staff people like Everett to help us on both sides. We're willing to work with both sides, willing to bring us together, to do the things that we know are important for this country and its future. Everett was one of those. And I'm going to miss him terribly. On the other hand, I know that where he is very, very important, and he'll do the job as well as anybody alive. And I just want to pay tribute to him, his wife, and his son who's here today, and just tell him how much we all love and appreciate him. With that, I yield the floor.